Good evening and welcome to Mello TV. I'm your host, Nicole Hayles. Coming up in tonight's Mello TV Bill Johnson poll, the people of Jamaica will tell us which of the political parties do they think would do a better job of governing Jamaica at this time, the JLP or the PNP, and their favorability ratings for both parties. Join discussion tonight to analyze this evening's data are renowned pollster Bill Johnson and political analyst Paul Bourne. Later on in the show, we'll have PNP Senator Damian Crawford. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Bill, what's the favorability rating for the JLP based on the views of the Jamaican people?
Okay, well, 18 months ago, 62% of the Jamaican public had a favorable opinion of the JLP. 19% had an unfavorable opinion. That favorable opinion has dropped like a dead weight to 36%, and unfavorable is up to 35%. So at this point, the JLP is barely keeping its head above water, so to speak. The fact that the Jamaican public didn't blame or doesn't seem to blame the Prime Minister for the troubles that they perceive the country to be in doesn't reflect over to the Prime Minister's party, as the people seem to have no trouble in ascribing what they perceive to be the troubles of the party, of the country, to the party. Now the JLP's numbers have fallen among all political groups in the country, but they're still very, very favorable among their core group of voters, the JLP voters, at 74%. But with the PNP voters, they've gone from 38% 18 months ago to 14%. The unfavorable is up to 74% with the PNP voters. And perhaps more importantly, those who didn't vote, 18 months ago, 60% had a favorable opinion of the JLP. That's down to 28%. And the unfavorable is up from 14 to 34. Now, the JLP's dramatic fall from grace should be providing very fertile ground for the PNP to improve on its numbers from our last poll. And very shortly, we'll see if they have done that or not.
Paul, you just heard the numbers that Bill gave us, so let's delve deeper into the poll. The JLP favorability has decreased to 36% and their unfavorability went up from 19% to 35%. What do you make of these numbers? Is this a reflection of the ministry's underperforming, or does the buck stops with the Prime Minister because he's the one who selects who represents each ministry?
The matter of governance is both a general as well as a specific matter. And what do I mean by that? Each member is a part of the whole, and the Prime Minister, by extension, is responsible for the whole. So it's clear from the numbers that the Jamaican people is not giving the ministers a favorable ratings generally. And that is exactly what is happening here in terms of the reflection of the numbers. Because if that were the case, we would not see a 42% decline. That is a massive decline in 18 months. So that is mean with all the troubles that is unfolding in Jamaica at the moment. We're talking about the crime, we're talking about COVID and all other situations. In addition to the member of parliaments and by extension, the senators who are in government, they are clearly not doing a job that people will actually give them a high favorability ratings for. Those figures are staggering and they must be saying something to the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister have handlers and see these numbers tonight, he should say to himself, listen, we need to do some reshuffling of the cabinet, because it clearly means that Jamaicans are moving away from, and let me use another term to say that, political apathy is ripe in Jamaica at the moment, and this is a clearly bad sign for politics.
You speak of reshuffling, but he just reshuffled the cabinet. Let's examine the numbers a bit deeper. With the political supporters are saying favorability with voters of the JLP-led government has declined since 2020. Likewise, unfavorability from their own voters have increased. What's interesting is that the numbers that did not vote, 28% down from 60% in 2020, and likewise, unfavorability rating of the JLP have gone up. What could have impacted the people's opinion, Paul?
The underperformance of the various ministers, and chief among them would be the Minister of National Security, followed by the Minister of Education and other persons. They are not holding their own, because when you look at it, 74% of the JLP voters in February 2022 is saying this about the government. And when you look at the numbers in terms of, this is clearly something actually going on. And what is going on is, I would expect the People's National Party to be putting forward some solution that they will be seen as a viable alternative to what is going on. Instead of that is happening, we are seeing the reverse. And it clearly means that Mark Golden is not putting forward a message that the Jamaican person sees as an alternative to the current government.
Bill, let's look at the numbers for the PNP. What is the poll saying?
The PNP was split. 38% had a favorable opinion, 38% had an unfavorable opinion, and 24% were not sure. Today, that 38% has dropped to 23%, 42% unfavorable, and 35% not sure. It's difficult to see how an opposition party can keep losing momentum when people perceive the country is going in the wrong direction as it is. But somehow the PNP is managing to continue its negative momentum, even while the JLP is perceived to be doing a very poor job by many people.
Paul, are the numbers dismal for the PNP? What do you believe they can do to regain the favorability among the Jamaican people?
Wow, what numbers? Let's look at some stuff in terms of comparison. A 42% decline for the JLP and a 40% decline for the PNP. So the PNP is marginally doing better than the JLP in terms of its thing. But when you look at the percentage of persons in 2022, 23% of Jamaicans. That is awful. Now, that is a pathetic number in terms of what you are saying is 77% of Jamaicans do not see the PNP technically as an alternative. And that is an awful situation and an awful state to be in. Now, remember, we're talking about people generally here, including some of the base people inside the People's National Party. And if they do not see their party as a viable alternative, we're really in trouble in Jamaica. Because what we need to understand clearly that democracy is not based on a single party keeping office for 20, 15, 17 years. Democracy is actually enhanced when you can have a change in government, a change in policy. And if it is that the country is moving in the wrong direction and the People's National Party is not seen as an alternative, then Jamaica is really in a precarious position.
Bill, break down the PNP's favorability numbers for us.
In terms of the parties, the PNP's favorable is 6% with the JLP, 66% with the PNP, and 19% with those who didn't vote. The unfavorable, obviously, 72% with the JLP, 17% with the PNP, 39% of those who didn't vote. It's interesting, only 66% of those who voted for the PNP in the last election have a favorable opinion of it today. So it's lost a third of its supporters in 18 months in terms of those who voted for it not having a favorable opinion of it at this point.
Our news team went on the streets today and asked the public of the two parties who would they believe would do a better job of governing the country at this time.
The best party right now for run the country. Them already unite already, you know. Labour right already in it, and them will do pretty fine. The only thing I want them to dash the minimum wages. Just if then dash away our resident, make poor people can look like a somebody. And Prime Minister, you in vote for, you know, you Labour right vote for, you know, and them they get the worst treatment. And that's true, they love you still, you know, because you go on good. Just continue to do good same way. But just dash the minimum wages. If you do that, our raise make poor people can live more better. You know? And that's all what I have to say. Because you're going on fine, I like it. I like your style.
But I believe that the JLP is a better party for Jamaica, right? And I think that the only thing that is keeping things down away right, you know, is the corona. But as soon as the corona thing get over, it will be just JLP again. Because, to be truthful, if it wasn't for the corona, I think nobody would be even thinking about PNP for now. They will come back after a time, but for this time, I think it's JLP time now.
But to my knowledge, neither PNP nor Labour right can do nothing for us. No joke. And a matter of fact, look what the government do to us. Minimum wage, stand still, and everything, every God almighty thing, are raised.
Based on my opinion on the point of who is or which party is better to run the country at this time, and based on my experience, because I was even a political activist and I worked for both parties. Started out with one and saw what is going on, then I moved to the other and stuff like that. So, based on that experience, the Socialist Party is the better party for me, in my view, to run the country because they have a little more leniency towards the lower class of people than the Labourites.
According to my knowledge and my experience, I believe the JLP is the better party to run the country. Why saying that? The other party was inside in it rather for at least some 18 years and nothing much was done. Since the administration through Andrew Hayles came, Andrew Hayles did a lot of things which the PNP never done within 18 years.
Paul, you just heard the thoughts of the people, and before that you heard the numbers for the breakdown that Bill gave us. Your thoughts?
Based on the Vox Pop, it's 60% of the persons who actually spoke said the Jamaica Labour Party. And, and this is exactly what we're actually speaking about. We're actually saying that something is going on in Jamaica, and a gentleman spoke to it. He said if the government could just actually free up the minimum wage, and I presume what he's actually saying there is look at the difficulty that poor people are having in Jamaica and assist them, Prime Minister. That's exactly what he's saying. And I presume that sentiment is also a part of the figures that are happening here, because a number of persons are struggling in Jamaica, and during this period of time that they are struggling, what is happening that they are seeing an increase in crime that's complicating matters, and so they are seeing lockdown. That means they are unable to actually do what they normally would do. All of the income that they would have actually garnered, maybe in their nightlife, etc., has been actually curtailed. They're also seeing COVID. So many things are happening to Jamaican people, and despite all of that, they are saying the Prime Minister is doing a very good job. And a gentleman actually said that if it were not for COVID, then the PNP wouldn't be in power for a while. These are no indications. And as I said before, and I'm saying it again, the People's National Party spent too long a time in power. The 18 years is destroying them. They did not make preparation for things like these. So what is now happening? The People's National Party has changed face from Peter Phillips to Golden, and the numbers have declined. So what does it mean? Something is systematically wrong with what the PNP is actually putting forward to the Jamaican people. It's clear. If you have changed leadership and you are seeing a decline in your numbers, it means your fundamental philosophy is flawed, or your fundamental philosophy is waning, or your fundamental philosophy is lost somewhere in transition. And the people are saying the People's National Party need to look at what they are doing, because it's either the People's National Party ideology has changed so close to that of the JLP that people can't make a distinction between both parties. And what they're saying is let the JLP run the country, since that's the situation. And that is not a good thing for Jamaica.
Bill, give us the general breakdown and the party breakdown.
Okay, well, 18 months ago, again, 55% said they felt the JLP would do a better job of governing Jamaica at that time. 18% said the PNP. The JLP support has fallen to 31%. The PNP has slipped to 15. So basically the JLP has gone from a 3-to-1 majority over the a 3-to-2 majority over the PNP to basically a 3-to-1 majority over the PNP to a 2-to-1 plurality over the PNP, 31 to 15. Now, from the PNP's point of view, these numbers I think are particularly troubling when you look at the vote by party. Only 52% of those who voted for the PNP in the last election are supporting say the PNP would do a better job today. 71% of those who voted for the JLP said the JLP would do a better job, but only 52% of the PNP's own voters from 18 months ago are willing to support the party today. That has to be incredibly troubling for the opposition. In terms of the non-voters, they were basically 5-to-1 for the JLP. They're now 2.5 to 1 for the JLP. Once again, not a good sign for the PNP.
We're now joined by Opposition Senator Damian Crawford. Damian Crawford, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm quite well, thanks. Based on this evening's poll numbers, are the people to blame the JLP-led government on a whole, or should the buck stop with the Prime Minister?
Well, the buck stops with the Prime Minister, but it doesn't mean that the entire blame belongs to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is ultimately in charge and therefore is the chief minister for basically all ministries. However, there are persons with responsibilities, as has been assigned by the Prime Minister, and they too will have to take some of the people's angst as it relates to their performance. But at the end of the day, they should hold him accountable.
It is said that people at times tend to love a specific person in a political party and oftentimes ignore the work of the party as a whole. Hence, they will vote just because of one and not because of all. What do you say of this?
Well, because Jamaica has not really had a political conversation around ideology, it has been more about personalities. There was a point in time when the People's National Party was known to be a socialist party or left-leaning, and the Jamaica Labour Party was known to be right-leaning. And as much as Michael Manley was popular at the time, his popularity was also entrenched by the opinion that he espoused of socialism and democratic socialism. Over time, it has shifted away from an ideological conversation, which should have been the full sum of the party, to a personality conversation, which is mainly the leader of the party. And that's because the parties have not differentiated themselves sufficiently for the conversation to be ideological as versus personality.
Let's examine the numbers deeper with what the political supporters are saying. Favorability with voters of the JLP-led government has declined since 2020. Likewise, the unfavorability from their own voters have increased. What's interesting is that the number of persons that did not vote, 28% down from 60% in 2020, and likewise the unfavorability ratings of the JLP have gone up. What could have impacted the views of the people where this is concerned?
Well, I think in the absolute, the JLP has not performed very well. Sometimes in the relative, persons cannot be performing well based on an opinion or another. But in the absolute, the corruption has been very high. In the absolute, I think the handling of the COVID situation has drawn the negative perception of the people. In the absolute, the crime situation is out of hand. So even without the JLP individual saying this is how you should handle it or how you should not, for example, state of emergency or no state of emergency, that's a relative position. But in the absolute, I think that they have failed at many of the most important variables. The economy, as it relates to people's ability to survive, has not been doing well. The criminal activity has been out of control. The multiple corruption cases have been reported. And so therefore, in the absolute, whether PNP, JP are undecided, you can say that they are not doing well in a certain area. And I think a question that asks for this specific question about the favorability of the Jamaica Labour Party, I think that has declined because both the JP, the PNP, and the undecided persons perceive that they are not doing well in these areas.
Mr. Crawford, tell us, how would you advise the PNP to gain this cohort of persons who did not vote? What should the PNP do?
Well, so far, unfortunately, what we have recognized is that while the JP has lost some support and lost some favor, it has gone mainly to political apathy and to disenfranchisement. I think it is now time that we even start polling the UIC to see if they're getting some of this political apathy towards the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party. As a member of the PNP, I think my advice to the party would be that they should create in their minds what type of country they want and start to promote it. They have not been very outward, they have not been very clear to the people what type of country and what type of approach they would take. So if the people are anxious about crime, what would be the People's National Party approach? Allow them to decide if it is sensible or not. If it is going to be about the economy and living standards, what would be the People's National Party approach? Michael Manley wrote books suggesting what his approach would be. And to this point, I think the People's National Party is only proposing what is proposed, but not putting forward what they would do in circumstances such as these. And I believe that is why the voter being disappointed what the JP is doing isn't very sure or very aware of what the PNP will do. And so they go into non-support of none of the two.
Mr. Crawford, let's turn to the numbers for the PNP. The poll, it's showing dismal numbers for the People's National Party. Even though the party is not in power, they still managed to lose favorability rating and increase their unfavorability rating. What do you say of these numbers, and what do you suggest the PNP start doing at this time to increase their numbers?
Well, the favorability of an opposition, I believe, is based on the opinion or the perception of what the opposition should be doing. And the opposition's role, I believe, in the minds of the people is that the opposition should be protecting them from the abuse of power. Unfortunately, in the absolute, the PNP has not been effective in that, nor has the PNP tried to do that in many cases, in my opinion. So to that extent, the people might be disappointed that the function of an opposition is not being carried out by the People's National Party, and by extension, it has lost favor with the people. The use of curfews, lockdowns, the lack of remuneration to persons who are dependent on schools being open or entertainment industry, the general silence that the People's National Party has displayed on many of these issues, and then the inadequate communication about why they're acting in ways that they're acting, I believe might have caused this.
Still on the issue of the decline in favorability ratings for the PNP, it has declined among PNP voters. In recent times, the PNP has issues with internal elections, you know, that's played out in the public. How has this affected the views of the people? And what kind of message is needed to regain the numbers and recapture the voters?
Well, I don't buy into the argument about we have had elections. Before the Jamaica Labour Party won in 2016, there was a challenge of unruliness by Audley Shaw. During that challenge, Chris Tupton made a statement that Andrew Holness don't like bright people. That's a quote. So there was a general rift between those two entities. Before the PNP won in 2011, there was a challenge of Portia Simpson by Peter Phillips. So a challenge in and of itself is not defined. It is what happens after the challenge. And unity is, in my opinion, the duty of the victor. And that has not been carried out in the People's National Party. I believe what is lacking more than unity is something to unite around. And that would be the policy platform of the People's National Party. I've never been willing to unite around a person without a policy platform that I'm in agreement with. This is a sacrifice of time, a sacrifice of money, a sacrifice of emotions for a country that we want to see. And if that is not being promoted, if that's not being convinced to the disciples, it's going to be a problem. So what is happening, the PNP, I believe, was down to its core support. And to see that we're losing some of our core support is very concerning, because those are the disciples for the party.
So can the PNP repair the fractures that have been created within the party and regain favorability ahead of the next general election?
A day in politics is a million years. Yesterday you're down, today up. There's nobody that could have told me that the PNP would have lost the 2016 election. I was very sure in my mind that we were going to be victorious. So with all that is happening, I believe that if the People's National Party put forward a platform that will once again remind the people of what we stand for and what we stood for, then we will quickly regain a lot of our support. I don't believe the JLP has concretized the majority of people. If you look at the results of the actual poll, meaning the election, most people didn't participate. And if you look on your polls, you realize most people suggest that they're uncertain or unconvinced. And so that is a lucrative shopping ground. That's a lucrative area for the PNP to put forward policies that they want to have conversations around and to attract people to that country that they want to be.
Let's turn to PNP Party President Mark Golding. Some persons are still uncertain about Mr. Golding and his leadership of the PNP and possible taking over the reins as Prime Minister of Jamaica. Your thoughts?
I feel sad. I feel sad for Mr. Golding, and I feel sad for the party. I feel sad because I know what an individual goes through when they offer themselves to the public. And if the public isn't perceived to be accepting to that offer, any individual would feel slighted in a way. What I'm very concerned about is 40% of the PNP is in support. When you go into battle, you need 100% of your army to be or near to 100%. So I am concerned that 40% of the PNP supporters found high favorability with Mr. Golding. Some opinions which I've found to be acceptable to me is that the promotion of Mr. Golding has not reflected the person, Mr. Golding. A very smart individual, a very cerebral individual who studies hard, who questions things, and who put forward proposals. I don't think that the way that I've been marketing him reflects that, and that might be confusing to the consumer. It is like if KFC tried to say they're a healthy meal, it might be confusing to the consumer. So I think that is one of the things that is happening right now, and then he is new to the fore of politics. Persons like myself have been in it at the fore of it since 2008. Persons like Philip Powell, Lisa Anna, Peter Bunting, they have been at the fore. He was never at the fore of the politics, and so many people did not know him very well. And then what they're being exposed to is not him. So by extension, I think that is one of the negatives that's being faced.
Mr. Crawford, let's turn to the numbers for the undecided voters. Both parties have suffered a decrease, but the JLP has a larger decline in favorability. And let's also look at those who are undecided, those not sure about either 50%. How can the PNP use these numbers to advise the party on the way forward? And is the PNP in trouble? And what should they do at this time?
Not really. I think we have to add context to the two numbers. There's a number that we had July 2020, when it was a time for decision making. An election was on the horizon. There's another time, February 2022, when it is not a time for decision making. No election is on the horizon. So it is reasonable for persons who are not activists, political individuals who are not card-carrying members, are very informed and aware of political procedures, to be undecided at this particular point in time. And as it gets closer to an election, when people start to pay more attention, when the political platforms are laid, then people might become more decided. What you need to be happy about as a opposition party, who is not currently very popular, is that the other party have not conquered. These people have not captured their attention and their imagination. And if you look at what is happening, as I said, the UIC is capturing people's imagination because they have lost favor with the other two. They're seeking an answer. There must be a government. Everybody understands that. And most people agree with that, especially those who are dependent on government, low-income individuals, accept that there will be a government. And none of the two has captured their imagination. The PNP must look within itself to see who, what, and how we can capture the imagination of the people. And having captured that imagination, we can convince them that we are worthy.
Tell us, Damian Crawford, before we go, how can the PNP convince the people of Jamaica that they're the right choice to lead the country?
Put forward a platform, put forward what type of country they want to see and how they're going to achieve it. And then the people say we agree or we disagree. Firstly, with the type that you want to see, and then secondly, with how you're going to achieve it. They may be in agreement with the type of country you want, but not in agreement with how you plan to achieve it. Or they may not be in agreement with the type of country you want, and by extension, they will go further to look at how you plan to achieve it. A political party is in the game of selling personalities and ideas. We have negated the second part and only be selling personalities, and that has not been bought by the public. So I think that if we go to putting forward our ideas, especially with the crisis the people are facing generally, we might be able to draw some attention and draw some support.
Thank you very much, Damian Crawford of the People's National Party.
Thank you very much for having me.
Paul, before we go this evening, what do you want to leave with the Jamaican people based on the numbers that were revealed this evening?
The Jamaican people, what I would want to leave with the government ministers and the opposition, that you have failed the Jamaican people. And what do I mean by that? The numbers are saying that people are despondent, people are frustrated what is actually going on in Jamaica, to the point where even your base is actually moving away from supporting you. And this is a clear indication that something must be done. And so the voice is out there to Mr. Holness. Mr. Holness, you need to do something about what is happening with your favorability as that of your party. And for the opposition, a message is needed from you, one that will resonate with the Jamaican people.
Bill, come tomorrow, what can we expect?
Oh, very interesting program tomorrow. We've asked people if Jamaica would be better off today if it had remained a colony of Great Britain 60 years ago instead of declaring its independence. And I think we're really going to have an interesting discussion about these results tomorrow.
Very interesting results tomorrow. Can't wait to hear them. There you have it. Join us tomorrow and every weekday until February 25 to get the answers to many more important questions during the Mello TV Bill Johnson poll, and listen to Mello FM and to Rhythm FM for newscasts of the recap. I want to thank this evening's guests, pollster Bill Johnson and political analyst and commentator Paul Board and PNP Senator Damian Crawford. I'm Nicole Hayles on behalf of the entire production team. Thanks for watching.